It's been nearly a month since the Bushfires Royal Commission released its final report. At the time, the Victorian government offered qualified support for most of the recommendations. Today, it's delivered its official response. Reporter Lisa Maximovic joins me now from Melbourne. So, Lisa, John Brumby has accepted all but one of the recommendations.
That's right, Ros. As you mentioned, when the Royal Commission handed down its findings almost a month ago, the government gave in principle support for 59 of the 67 recommendations. Now it's had a month to digest those recommendations. The government, including the Premier himself, has gone out into bushfire areas for community consultation, and they've come back today saying that they will implement, at least in part or in full, 66 of the 67 recommendations. Two of the key recommendations that they will implement in full include a fuel reduction target, of 385,000 hectares. That almost quadruples the fuel reduction targets that they have in place now. So they'll work towards that target over the next 4 years, they've said. They said it's something that they simply couldn't do overnight. The other key recommendation in full is scrapping the fire service levy. That was something that the Premier initially wasn't too keen on, but he's gone back to Cabinet and they've agreed to do it. That's going to be a system that sees all homeowners and property owners contributing to the levy, regardless of whether they have home insurance or not. Now, the one key recommendation that the government's decided to ignore is the voluntary buyback of land in bushfire-prone areas. Now, that idea was largely unpopular in bushfire communities because people thought it would encourage residents to leave their hometowns. But the primary reason for the government rejecting it, the Premier said, was because he simply thought it was unsafe.
Could have a whole street of people, and some voluntary withdrew from the area, which means that you could have one house remaining and you'd have vacant land on either side, which would actually increase and not reduce the fire risk.
Lisa, what did John Brumby say about one of the most contentious recommendations, that was burying overhead power lines?
Well, that's one of the recommendations they're implementing in part. Even the Royal Commission acknowledged that it was an extremely costly measure to put power lines underground, something in the vicinity of $5 billion, in fact. The government is instead going to strengthen the obligations of power companies to maintain or replace ageing power line infrastructure. The government's also going to put in a new power line bushfire safety task force.
And Lisa, what will actually change then on the ground in the fire danger zones in Victoria? Briefly.
Well, already as part of the interim findings that the government has acted on, most of the high-risk areas in Victoria have neighbourhood safer places. There's about 100 of those in place already. That's an area designated for the community to go to flee to as a last resort. We've also got new warning systems in place. There's text messages that go out to people in those communities, new codes to judge the extremity of a bushfire danger day. And the government's also announced today that it will fund 600 full-time firefighting positions.
Lisa, thank you.